Have you ever stood up from the couch and thought, that used to be easier? Or maybe you've noticed that carrying groceries takes a little more effort. Climbing stairs leaves your legs tired sooner, or your walks aren't quite as effortless as they once were. Most people assume that's simply what aging looks like. I used to think the same thing. But then I came across something that completely changed the way I looked at muscle health. Researchers have learned that as we get older, muscle loss isn't just about getting weaker. It's also about giving our muscles the right signals to stay strong. That made me wonder, what if I spent just 30 days eating the foods that give those signals most effectively? Not expensive supplements, not a restrictive diet, just 5 ordinary foods I could find at almost any grocery store. So I gave it a try. I didn't expect a miracle. I wasn't trying to look younger. I simply wanted to know whether everyday life could feel a little easier. 30 days later, the biggest surprise wasn't what I saw in the mirror. It was what I stopped noticing. I stopped thinking about every staircase. I stopped bracing myself before standing up from low chairs. Even carrying grocery bags felt less like a chore. And as we count down these 5 foods, you'll notice something interesting. Each one solved a different problem. By the time we reach number 1, you'll see why it wasn't one food that made the biggest difference. It was how they all worked together. If you're interested in practical, evidence-based ways to stay active and independent, consider subscribing. Every week, we share simple strategies designed to help you move well and feel your best as the years go by. Let's start with the food I almost left off the list. Food 5: eggs. For years, eggs were one of the most misunderstood foods in nutrition. Today, they're widely recognized as one of the highest quality sources of protein available for most people. But here's the part I didn't appreciate. The real benefit isn't simply that eggs contain protein. It's how that protein talks to your muscles. One of the amino acids in eggs is called leucine. Don't worry about remembering the name. Just remember its job. Imagine your muscles are waiting for a text message telling them, it's time to start repairing. Leucine helps send that message. And as we age, that message naturally becomes quieter. Scientists call this anabolic resistance. That's simply a technical way of saying your muscles don't respond to protein as efficiently as they once did. The encouraging news is that you can help overcome some of that resistance by making sure your muscles receive high-quality protein regularly throughout the day. That idea completely changed my breakfast. Instead of grabbing toast by itself, I started building breakfast around eggs. The first few mornings didn't feel any different. But by the end of the first week, I noticed something I hadn't expected. I wasn't looking for a snack before lunch anymore. That steady feeling made it much easier to avoid reaching for highly processed foods later in the morning. It wasn't a dramatic transformation. It was a quiet improvement. And those quiet improvements started adding up. That was my first clue that this experiment wasn't really about finding one amazing food. It was about removing one obstacle at a time. Eggs solved breakfast. The next food solved something completely different. It answered a question I'd never thought to ask. Why do some high-protein foods keep you satisfied for hours, while others seem to disappear almost as quickly as you eat them? We'll get into that next. By the time the first week ended, I realized something. Feeling stronger wasn't just about eating more protein. It was also about how that protein fit into my day. The next food taught me that lesson. Food 4: cottage cheese. I'll admit it. For years, I walked right past cottage cheese at the grocery store. I assumed it was one of those foods people bought because they thought they should, not because they actually enjoyed it. I couldn't have been more wrong. The first time I added it as an afternoon snack, I expected to be hungry again an hour later. Instead, something unexpected happened. Dinner stopped feeling like an emergency. If you've ever reached 5 o'clock feeling like you'd eat almost anything in sight, you know exactly what I mean. That made me curious. Why did this snack feel so different? Part of the answer comes from the type of protein it contains. Much of the protein in cottage cheese is called casein. Unlike proteins that are digested fairly quickly, casein is broken down more gradually. Imagine filling a bathtub. You can dump in a bucket of water all at once, or slowly let the faucet run. Either way, the tub fills. One simply happens over a longer period. Casein works in a similar way, by releasing amino acids more gradually as it's digested. That doesn't make it better than eggs or other protein sources. It simply means it offers your muscles support over a longer stretch of time. For me, the science explained why I stayed satisfied longer. But the bigger surprise was what happened because of it. I stopped wandering into the pantry looking for something sweet. Not because I was forcing myself to resist, because I genuinely wasn't as hungry. That was the first time I realized this experiment wasn't testing my willpower. It was changing the environment that shaped my choices. By the middle of the second week, another small change appeared. My energy felt more even throughout the afternoon. There was no dramatic burst of energy, just fewer ups and downs. Sometimes the most meaningful improvements are the ones you barely notice while they're happening. Then another question crossed my mind. If breakfast helped my muscles, and a better afternoon snack helped me avoid unnecessary eating, could dinner actually help my body recover better overnight? That question led me to the food I was most excited to try. Food 3: Salmon. Most conversations about salmon begin with heart health. Mine didn't. Mine began after a long walk. Normally, after being active for most of the day, my legs felt noticeably heavier by evening. Nothing unusual. Just the kind of fatigue many people accept as normal. So I became curious. Would changing my dinner make any difference at all? Salmon gave me another piece of the puzzle. It provides complete protein, but that's only part of the story. It's also naturally rich in omega-3 fats, nutrients researchers continue studying for their role in supporting healthy muscles, alongside regular physical activity and adequate protein intake. Here's what stood out to me. Salmon wasn't simply another protein source. It reminded me that one meal can support several parts of healthy aging at the same time. Muscles don't work in isolation. Neither do our bodies. When one meal supports muscle health, heart health, and overall nutrition together, that's a combination worth paying attention to. By the third week, I noticed something encouraging. The little improvements I'd experienced earlier weren't disappearing. They were starting to feel normal. That's very different from feeling excited for one day. It felt like my routine was finally beginning to work for me instead of depending on motivation. But one obstacle still remained. Knowing what to eat was no longer the problem. Finding something healthy when life got busy was. And the next food solved that better than anything else on the list. By the start of the third week, something unexpected happened. I wasn't thinking about protein anymore. I wasn't counting grams. I wasn't wondering if I had picked the perfect food. Instead, I noticed something much simpler. Healthy choices were becoming the easy choices. That turned out to be the biggest turning point of the entire experiment. Food 2: Chicken. The biggest benefit of chicken had almost nothing to do with nutrition. It had everything to do with decision fatigue. Think about how many food decisions we make every day. What's for lunch? What's for dinner? Should I cook or just grab something quick? By the end of a busy day, even good intentions can lose to convenience. Chicken quietly solved that problem. One Sunday afternoon, I grilled several chicken breasts at once. Not because I enjoy meal prep. Honestly, I don't. I did it because I wanted to make the rest of the week easier. I had no idea how much that one decision would change things. The next few days felt different. Opening the refrigerator no longer meant starting from scratch. A balanced meal was already halfway finished. Some days the chicken went into a salad. Other days it became tacos with black beans and vegetables. Sometimes it was as simple as chicken, roasted potatoes, and steamed broccoli. The meals changed. The effort didn't. That's what surprised me. Chicken didn't make me more disciplined. It made discipline less necessary. Of course, chicken is also an excellent source of complete protein, giving your muscles the amino acids they need to repair themselves after everyday activity. But here's what fascinated me. The science wasn't what made the biggest difference. Removing one daily decision did. Researchers often talk about making healthy behaviors easier to repeat. This was the first time I actually experienced what that meant. By the end of week 3, healthy eating no longer felt like something I had to remember. It was simply becoming my normal routine. And that's when I realized something. I had been looking at this challenge the wrong way from the very beginning. I thought I was searching for the best food. Instead, I was learning how each food solved a different problem. That realization made the final food impossible to ignore. Food 1: beans and lentils. When I first planned this experiment, I assumed the number 1 spot would belong to the food with the most protein. It didn't. Beans and lentils earned this place for a completely different reason. They were the food that connected everything else. Yes, they provide plant protein, but they also bring fiber, complex carbohydrates, magnesium, potassium, and other nutrients that support an active lifestyle. On paper, that sounds impressive. In real life, something much more interesting happened. Meals simply felt complete. A bowl of soup became more satisfying with lentils. A salad became more filling with chickpeas. Grilled chicken became a more balanced dinner with black beans on the side. I wasn't replacing the other foods. I was making them work better together. That was the moment everything clicked. I spent this entire month believing the winner of this countdown would be one incredible food. Instead, I discovered the real winner wasn't a food at all. It was the system those 5 foods created together. After 30 days, I realized that was the wrong question. The better question was, how can each meal make the next healthy choice easier? That single shift changed the entire experiment. By the end of the month, I wasn't relying on motivation. I wasn't chasing perfect nutrition. I had quietly built a system where breakfast supported lunch, lunch supported dinner, and dinner made tomorrow's breakfast easier to stick with. And that's why beans and lentils finished at number 1. Not because they were the most powerful food on the list, but because they helped turn 5 separate foods into one sustainable way of eating. In the final part, I'll tell you what actually changed after 30 days. It wasn't bigger muscles. It wasn't a dramatic physical transformation. It was something far more meaningful, and it's the reason I'd happily do this experiment again. When the 30 days were over, I did something I hadn't done all month. I stood in front of the mirror. For a few seconds, I looked for bigger arms, more defined shoulders, some obvious sign that the experiment had worked. Then I realized I'd been looking in the wrong place. The real changes had been happening long before that moment. Walking up the stairs without thinking about my legs. Carrying groceries in one trip instead of two. Standing up from a low chair without pushing off the armrests. Getting out of the car without that familiar stiffness. None of those moments felt dramatic. That's exactly why they mattered. Because real strength rarely announces itself. It quietly gives you back pieces of everyday life. That's when one sentence came into my mind. Strong muscles aren't valuable because they look impressive. They're valuable because they quietly protect your independence. And for me, that became the real outcome of this 30-day challenge. Looking back, I realized I'd spent the entire month asking the wrong question. I thought I was searching for the strongest food. Instead, I should have been building the strongest system. That's why beans and lentils finished at number 1. Not because they're more powerful than eggs, or better than salmon, or somehow more important than chicken. They earned the top spot because they reminded me that muscles don't respond to one perfect meal. They respond to what happens day after day. Once breakfast became stronger, lunch became easier, dinner became more balanced, and each meal quietly supported the next. That was the biggest change my muscles experienced. Not one extraordinary food, but weeks of giving them what they needed to repair, recover, and keep doing their job. And that's the message I hope stays with you after this video ends. You don't need a miracle food. You don't need a perfect diet. You simply need to make the next meal a little better than the last. Because sometimes, one better meal doesn't just change your day. It changes the decision you make after it. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love to know. Which of these 5 foods will you start with first? Tell me in the comments. And if you'd like more practical, evidence-based tips to help you stay active, strong, and independent, don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, take care of yourself.